Hi, Janeites. If you're listening, please follow and subscribe. It really helps to grow the podcast and for me to bring you more episodes. Hi, Janeites, and welcome to episode 18 of the What the Austen podcast. And we are continuing on our Disney villain times Austen villain journey. Anna's back on the pod with me today, so welcome back, Anne.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. I have so much fun talking about Austen with you. I love that you love Disney and Austen, and I love to hear that so many listeners are kindred spirits, and you guys love Austen and Disney as well. It's two great fandoms.
Absolutely. No, two of my favorite loves. So today we'll be covering the villains in Sense and Sensibility, and we'll be comparing them against Disney villains. So I'm excited to do this episode. There are some really interesting villains in this novel. Mm-hmm. And the first villain from Sense and Sensibility to cover is Willoughby. So my Willoughby link was Hans from Frozen, who we've already kind of introduced. I feel I do have a couple more, but he was my main one, I think. They have so many similarities. Even though Willoughby doesn't set out to break Marianne's heart, he still does with that letter that he sends. Obviously, it's actually Miss Grey that writes it, but in the same way, Hans obviously, I wouldn't want to say he breaks Anna's heart, but he definitely shakes her perception of romance and love, because when she first meets Hans, she thinks she's in love with him. She thinks it's love. And then he kind of shakes that by just basically saying none of it was true. And that's exactly what Willoughby says in the letter to Marianne. He says it wasn't true. I didn't have feelings for you. I'm sorry that you misunderstood. So I think those two things make them really similar. Another one that I had on the list, because a lot of these aren't like fully, it was like together I think they make up his character. So the next one was Hook, and I think that's just because Willoughby is kind of manipulative and savvy, and I think Hook's kind of the same. He's able to manipulate Tinkerbell and his crew members. And also I think it's interesting that Willoughby tends to find loopholes to get out of things, and Captain Hook's really good at finding loopholes as well in documents, yes, that kind of thing. So I thought, yeah, that's quite similar between the two of them. And yeah, I think, for instance, Captain Hook says that he won't lay a finger on Peter Pan, and so then he takes a bomb instead, because it won't actually be him killing him, it's the bomb. But I think like Willoughby seems to get out of things that he's done. So obviously the woman that he impregnates, he seems to slide out of that. Courting Marianne and then cutting things off, he seems to slide out of that. And it's, yeah, I just thought it was really similar. And then the last one that I had was Kronk. And that's because I think he's easily manipulated by older women. So Miss Grey really manipulates Willoughby. So I thought that was quite similar between Miss Grey and Willoughby, and Kronk and in Yzma. And I think Willoughby can just be a bit of a numpty as well, and struggle with balancing what's right and wrong. And I think he sometimes just makes decisions based on the moment, not really thinking about the consequences.
Yeah, that's great. I didn't think about that. I really like that. And he's, the handsome piece of man that Kronk is supposed to be too.
Yeah. That's so funny.
That's good.
Who do you have for Willoughby?
Well, I had Hans, definitely, absolutely agree. And I said this in the Princess podcast, but whenever a Disney fan tells me they want to get into Austen, I always say, if you love Frozen, read Sense and Sensibility, because they have so many similarities. And I feel like I absolutely agree with what you're saying as far as Willoughby kind of like hurting Marianne with the Miss Grey letter. I feel like that equates so well with Hans saying, like, no, I've never loved you, and he kind of acts like you thought somebody would love you, and that's foolish. And that's kind of how that letter comes across, even though it's written by Miss Grey. That is how that letter comes across. But I would say, even though Willoughby didn't have the intention to hurt Marianne, it's not in that same sort of way. He does say to Eleanor when he comes back, when he's drunk and Marianne's sick and he comes back, which I always hate that that's not in the Emma Thompson Sense and Sensibility version of the movie. But when he comes back, he does say that he had the initial intent to just basically amuse himself, just see if she could fall in love with him. So, well, it's not the same kind of thing. Like, he's not doing it for money or, to take over a kingdom. I think that you could definitely say that their intentions weren't great to begin with. It's just that he actually did fall in love with her versus Hans not falling in love with Anna. And I feel like the Anna Hans Kristoff dynamic is so similar to Brandon, Willoughby, Marianne. And like I said earlier, Hans completely fooled me. I feel like Willoughby was another one of those who fooled me, because I was definitely 17 or 18 when I read it, totally in love with Willoughby. The guy that comes out of the fog, you're like, oh my gosh. And then he's horrible. And he reads poetry and he's like, this is wonderful. But think again, says Austen. Never trust an overly charming man. If we had taken Austen's advice, we would have been in the theater at Frozen, and we would have known better with Hans. But, yeah. And Willoughby cares more about money and status than love, and that's exactly Hans. Even though it's a completely different sort of thing, they still choose money and status over love. I mean, Hans never loves Anna, but it's still, he doesn't give himself that possibility to love because he cares about money and status.
Yeah, I love that. Absolutely. 100%. I agree. Do you have anyone else for Willoughby?
Just like a little minor one, circling back to Brom Bones from the Adventures of Mr. Toad or Adventures of Ichabod Crane and Mr. Toad. It goes by quite a few names. Some people call it The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. So anyway, that movie that we were talking about with the Headless Horseman, one thing that's kind of interesting is the dynamic between Brom Bones and the school teacher Ichabod Crane. Brom Bones always is underestimating the school teacher who he thinks is less than. And I feel like Willoughby, even though he doesn't really see Brandon as a rival, he still seems like he sees Brandon as a rival. He's always kind of having to make fun of him, and he's always sort of underestimating Brandon. And so I think there's like a little bit of a similarity there with that kind of arrogance.
Yeah, 100%. I agree. And that's a really good link there as well. Okay, so the next one, have you got any more you want to add for Willoughby?
That is everything.
Okay, so the next villain I have on the list is Lucy Steele. So I'll see who I've got for this one. I've got a couple, but I think my first one is Madame Medusa from The Rescuers.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, so I feel like they share certain characteristics. So Madame Medusa is fixated on a single goal. She's desperate for this diamond. She's like, I want the diamond. I've got to have the devil's eye. And she's obsessed with it. And I think that's very similar to Lucy. And she's very determined to have wealth and money and a better status in society. And I think they're both very manipulative for it. So yeah, very, very socially scheming. I think both of them are self-interested. Obviously because Lucy spends most of the novel secretly engaged to Edward, and most of her actions are to ensure that stays intact. Basically exposing it to Eleanor, because I think she can tell that there's something between them, and befriending Edward's sister Fanny. And it obviously backfires, but then Lucy seems to manage to bring it back, and she gets Robert instead. So I think Lucy's actually much more sneaky than Madame Medusa, because Madame Medusa is very much upfront about her craziness. And she's definitely more visually appealing and soft-spoken. So I think she's able to hide behind her looks and charms a bit more, which is why I've got a couple of other people on the list. So the other one that I have is... I want to say, is it named Bellwether? From Zootropolis, the sheep?
Yes. Yes.
So she comes across all nice, and from the offset looks like really cute and friendly, and she behaves really cute and friendly. But then when you actually find out later on that she's actually the mastermind behind the whole plot. So I thought that was really similar to Lucy. It's like she comes across like superficially and like on the exterior side of things, she comes across as like this nice, sweet woman who's just, in the marriage market like everyone else. But it actually turns out that she's much more calculated than that. It actually has a plan, and that's all exposed later on. So yeah, I've also put her on the list for Lucy Steele. And also the last one I have is Hades, and literally just because Hades uses love to emotionally manipulate and blackmail people. Like with Meg and the fact that she sacrifices her soul for someone that she used to love, and he runs off, and then he uses Hercules to emotionally blackmail her as well. And I think that's really similar to the way that Lucy emotionally manipulates and kind of blackmails Eleanor into staying secret about the engagement. And I 100% believe that Lucy knows about Eleanor and Edward having a connection.
Oh,
and
definitely.
he just twists it and uses it and makes Eleanor really suffer for it. So I think that's really similar between Hades and Meg.
I like that. Yeah. I didn't think of Hades or Medusa. I didn't think of either one of those. And I really like that a lot. That's such a good one, especially with the manipulating love connection. Lucy is one of my, I don't know, like I don't have favorite villains. I love that character, think anything well of her. I would say she's my favorite villain in just the fact that she is so well written. Like she's so well put together because she's so complex and she is so irritating and manipulative and just it's just, I don't know, just everything about her is just so well done.
It's just like it makes you cringe because you're just like, oh my gosh. But also I feel like she's so real. Like there's definitely people that you can meet in your life who are very much a Lucy, and I think that's what makes her more terrifying. Is like she could definitely be somebody that you know.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like she's one of Austen's most three-dimensional villains to me. I just think she's so well written and so well done.
Yeah, 100%. I totally agree with that. I'd love to know who your comparisons are for her.
Well, my top one was Bellwether, so I had to grin when you said that.
No way!
Yeah,
I can't believe it. Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
It's exactly everything you said. She's so sticky sweet and has a hidden evil agenda, and I just thought it just fit so perfectly. And I have to say, I think it's so interesting. I think I'd heard this before. I think in the UK, you guys call it Zootropolis then? Is that what the name of the movie is for you?
Yeah, Zootropolis, yeah.
It's Zootopia for us. Isn't that so strange?
Oh no, that is so strange. I had no idea.
I remember because I follow some UK Disney fans on Instagram and such. And so I feel like I remember seeing people when it came out saying, oh, I'm going to see Zootropolis. And I was like, that is so strange. And I looked it up and it was, everyone calls it Zootopia here. It's so weird that they changed the name. But anyway, that is a complete aside. So absolutely agree with that. I don't have anything to add to that because I thought it was amazing. I did struggle with Lucy Steele until I came up with that one. And I was like, oh, this works really well. But another one I had that is not exactly, but I feel like has elements is Mother Gothel from Tangled. She is, for those who haven't watched Tangled, which you should, because it's amazing. It's like my second favorite princess movie after Beauty and the Beast. But Mother Gothel steals Rapunzel away when she is a child because she has magic hair that glows when she sings, to quote Rapunzel. And this magic hair heals people. It makes them youthful. And so Mother Gothel steals her away from her king and queen parents and, locks her in a tower, like the classic Rapunzel story. But I think Mother Gothel is a very complex and interesting villain. She's probably another favorite Disney villain, not in the sense that I like her because I absolutely hate her, but I like, if from a writing perspective, I think she's really complex.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like she has the same level of complexity that Lucy has. So that's part of why I picked her. But I think they're both kind of narcissistic and they're both passive aggressive. I was thinking about the way that Lucy is just so patronizing and passive aggressive to Eleanor. And that's exactly what Mother Gothel is to Rapunzel. And she also, Lucy uses guilt to manipulate Eleanor. And that is something that Mother Gothel does with Rapunzel, because Rapunzel's a really sweet, naive, good person. And I wouldn't say that Eleanor is naive, but she has a very strict moral code and she is a good person. And there are certain things that she wouldn't do if someone says, don't tell, that I'm marrying Edward. Like, she knows that Eleanor is not going to tell. And that's kind of like Mother Gothel with Rapunzel. She tries to manipulate her into not leaving the tower and, various things. Like, she tells her false versions of things. Like, even Mother Gothel tells Rapunzel that that Flynn Rider has left her when that isn't the case. She's helped in a kidnapping plot, and Flynn, actually does care about Rapunzel, but it's that same sort of manipulation that Lucy Steele uses to manipulate Eleanor into believing a false reality. Mother Gothel is constantly telling Rapunzel a false reality, a false version of the world is scary. You can't go outside this tower. Ruffians will kill you, all of these sorts of things. And while it's not the same at all with what Lucy is telling Eleanor, and Eleanor's doesn't really have that much in common with Rapunzel. It's that same level of manipulation of, here's the reality. You thought this was reality, but here's the actual reality. And it isn't the reality, but it's this idea of Edward actually loves me, so you don't have a chance, And so it's a complete lie. And it's a very subtle, manipulative lie.
Yes. Oh my gosh, 100%. I love it. It's definitely that emotional manipulation. So similar between the two of them. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Amazing. Do you have anyone else, Lucy Steele, you want to add, or is that you wrapped up?
No, that is my list for her.
Amazing. So I have one more on the list for Sense and Sensibility. Is that the same for you? And
Robert Ferris?
Robert Ferris. Yeah.
Okay.
So he's the last one. I did struggle with him slightly, I think more because we don't get too much of his character, I don't think, in the books or in the adaptations of it. But I did pick a couple of people, and one of them was the Queen of Hearts. And that was just that moment to moment living, kind of being not that intelligent, very got quite a bad temper. Not that you really see Robert Ferris like having a temper about anything, but he's very much unpredictable, a little bit. Well, he's not very strategic whatsoever. He just does things and it makes no sense. You're just like, what? And that's a little bit like the Queen of Hearts, where she's just completely unpredictable, does random things at times. And also, I think they're both cowards in reality. And the Queen's a coward when she sees Alice growing. She gets really freaked out. And Robert, I think he's a bit of a coward as well, because he doesn't stand up for his brother, and he goes along with his family, but then he actually does the exact same thing that he was saying that his brother would make a massive mistake for doing. So it makes no sense to me. And then I actually just have one more for Robert, and that is King John. And again, I think that's just that low self-esteem, really bad with money, but obsessed with money, superficial. And I just see him as like
Robin Hood?
From Robin Hood. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah. So King John's from Robin Hood. Yeah. So he's like, he is the younger brother in the same way that King John is. And yeah, he's just like not very good with that position. He's like the childish and bizarre younger brother. So I thought that was a link as well between them.
Oh, those are great. I did not think of either one of those. And it actually, as soon as you said the Queen of Hearts, I loved it, because one of my absolute favorite quotes from Sense and Sensibility popped in my mind. I just pulled it up here. I keep some of my favorite literary quotes in my notes on my phone, just because I'm a nerd like that.
Love it.
One of my favorite quotes from Sense and Sensibility, it's not actually spoken out loud, but it's like Austen's narration, and it's this interaction between Eleanor and Robert Ferris. I think they're in a shop where he's getting gloves or something. No, he's not. Is he getting gloves or a little box, or he's getting something kind of ridiculous at this shop in London, and he's saying all kinds of ridiculous things, and the narration says that Eleanor, something like Eleanor thought that he didn't deserve the compliment of rational opposition, which made me think about the Queen of Hearts, because the whole thing with Wonderland is that there's no rationality there. And so I just thought that's so perfect, because the Queen of Hearts doesn't really deserve the compliment of rational opposition, because you just can't be rational with her. So that is such a great comparison. I love it. I didn't think of that at all.
Oh my gosh, and I love that you just like strengthened the argument so much with that quote. Amazing.
That's a good one. And I feel like that is just my favorite quote. It's like something I would love to say to people, when you're just talking to someone who's just talking complete nonsense, you just want to be like, you know what, I'm not even going to respond to you, because you don't deserve the compliment of a rational opposition. It's awesome. It's such a great quote. I would love to say that.
It's so funny.
So for mine, I really struggled with him too, but I actually I know I mentioned it before, but I kind of went back to Lucifer the cat from Cinderella, just because I think of Robert Ferris as completely ridiculous. He's his family's pet. He's smug like the cat. the cat really doesn't have a big agenda in Cinderella. He's just kind of like there and delights in other people's misery. And I feel like Robert Ferris like just delights in other people's misery. He's just sort of a side character who's there, who just, you know, he likes to gossip, it seems like it just seems like he's just, I don't know, he's not really like a true bully, but it's not like a perfect fit, but you know, he thinks he's better than everyone, which the cat thinks he's better than everyone. And the cat just sort of like gets all of his pompous personality from being a member of Lady Tremaine's like family and being kind of better than Cinderella even. And so I don't know, I think he's like the second son. He's like the pet of the family, and he gets all of his self-esteem out of just being part of this family, even though it's like he's not very important, at least at first.
I love that. That's brilliant. He literally is just like a pet. It's so funny.
He is. And he just like he goes around preening himself. I mean, it's not like you really see Lucifer doing this too much, but you just think of cats like preening themselves all the time. So
absolutely. And you know what? I was really annoyed that it was so difficult for me to place people for Robert, because when I thought about him, how he's portrayed in the adaptations, I was like, he looks like somebody who'd be like an awkward sidekick to a villain, or a villain in himself. Like, I don't know what it was about him, but it's like he's just got this awkwardness about him in his appearance.
Yeah, he really does.
Yeah, absolutely. That was everybody on my list for Sensibility. Do you have any other comments you want to make, or anyone else?
No, that is it.
We hope you've enjoyed this, and thanks so much, Anne. That's been so much fun. Like I really enjoyed going through the villains. But don't worry, if you're enjoying this series, there is more content to come this year. We have another 3 novels to cover, and here is a sneak peek of the next installments. Okay, so the first one on my list for Emma is
but I just think it's interesting, her ability within any circle or any kind of person, that she could just zero in on that hypocrisy and call it out.
So my first link to Frank Churchill is Jack Skellington from Nightmare Before Christmas.
Oh, that's great. One of my favorite parts of the whole book is when Mrs. Elton keeps calling Mr. Knightley Knightley, and then Emma is so upset about it.
Love that. That's so good. Oh my gosh, what a way to kick things off. Head over to my Instagram at What the Austen for all the updates, and for all of Anne's info that will be in the bio, so go ahead and check all of her content out. Her YouTube stuff is great, and also on Instagram as well. So I will see you in the next episode.